Welcome to Starbound's second channel. My name is JP and I'll be your narrator today. But before we get into today's story, please check below to see if you've subscribed to the channel. It's 100% free and just allows our stories to pop up in your feed more often. Throughout the known galaxy, no weapons inspired more terror to the wet-skinned species than those of the Lumari. Their hydro weapons could reduce any living being to a puddle of organic soup with a single splash. Entire armadas suffered at the mere sight of Lumari warships, their crews preferring captivity to liquidation. Every one of their rivals had nightmares about these weapons, except, as Apo was about to learn, for humans. General Apo's translucent body moved in agitation as he watched a human cadet stroll through the military district of Lumar. The human, Richard Maxwell, seemed utterly unimpressed by the towering structures of living membrane tissue that surrounded them, buildings that rose like massive water droplets frozen in mid-drip. Their surfaces constantly secreted moisture, contributing to the thick air that limited visibility meters. "Cadet Maxwell," General Apo said, his voice creating distinct vibrations in the humid air. "Your selection for this program wasn't random. You'll be the first human to train with our elite Hydro Corps." "Neat," Richard replied, suppressing a yawn as they kept walking. His eyes wandered to the architecture instead of focusing on the general. The walking paths, actually shallow canals filled with clean viscous gel for Lumari movement, seemed to hold more interest to him than the general's words. When they entered a training building, the general's body stiffened, a sign of increasing stress. "We've modified this entire wing at considerable expense. Dehumidifiers, solid flooring, protective barriers around the weapon vaults." His specialized sensing organs detected minute vibrations through the liquid medium, tracking Richard's movements with considerable accuracy. These halls witnessed the creation of weapons that ended the Great Lake conflict. "Cool buildings," Richard interrupted, pointing at the curved structures that flowed like liquid in zero gravity. "How do you keep them from, dripping all the way down?" General Apo's surface rippled violently. The other Lumari officers in the background maintained a respectful distance from the dry-skinned human, their bodies shifting between stiffness and fluidity as they watched the exchange. The human had already been through a 12-hour adaptation process, yet he seemed more tired than impressed. "Your daily routine will be strictly regulated," General Apo continued, his voice becoming increasingly pressurized, a characteristic Lumari stress response. 0500, human-compatible breakfast in an isolated chamber. 0600 to 1200, theoretical studies of hydro weapon development. 1300 to 1800, practical observation from a safe distance. Richard nodded politely, his attention caught by a building entrance, a membrane-sealed opening that parted like water when touched by Lumari biochemical signatures. "So it's like a fancy automatic door?" he asked, reaching out to touch it despite the general's warning ripple. "Cadet Maxwell!" General Apo's manipulators curled tightly, a sign of restraining anger. "These are sophisticated security measures designed to protect our most devastating weapons. Your quarters will be maintained at 30% humidity for your comfort, but you must never approach the storage vaults without supervision." Yeah, don't touch the magic water. Got it," Richard said, rolling his eyes. He pulled out his communication device, checking it while the general explained the emergency decontamination procedures. The general's moisture production increased by 40%, a visible stress response, as he watched Richard lean too close to a weapon display case, apparently trying to smell it. "Cadet Maxwell, the P-47 Hydrostrain eliminated an entire rebel fleet. This is not, as you suggested earlier, magic water." "Can I take a sample home as a souvenir?" Richard asked, perking up for the first time since the cafeteria had been mentioned. His question sent ripples of horror through the observing Lumari officers, their gel-like bodies quivering with shock. General Apo's body shifted to its full height of 2.5 meters, his internal fluid channels visibly pulsing with agitation. "These weapons are capable of liquefying organic matter in seconds, one drop on unprotected skin." "But what about swimming?" Richard interrupted again, changing the subject. "That training pool looks pretty nice." The general's surface tension reached critical levels. Here was humanity's representative to their most elite military program, treating their deadliest weapons like a water park attraction. The human had been specially chosen after extensive screening, yet he seemed more interested in taking selfies with confused Lumari scientists than learning about the liquid weapons that had shaped their history. "Perhaps we should review the safety protocols again," General Apo said, his voice creating stress ripples in the viscous gel path beneath them. The importance of maintaining proper distance from the weapon vaults cannot be overstated. "Sure thing," Richard replied, already doodling what appeared to be Earth spacecraft in his notebook instead of taking proper notes on the briefing. Quick question though, those cool wet buildings, how do they work exactly? A subtle vibration passed through the assembled Lumari officers, their equivalent of a collective groan. General Apo's skin began producing even more moisture, his stress now visible to every Lumari within sensing range. The humans' casual dismissal of their most closely guarded military secrets was unprecedented. "The gel pipeline is hidden inside the wall," the general continued, desperately trying to steer the conversation back to security measures. "The dehumidifiers are calibrated to—" "Is it lunchtime yet?" Richard asked, interrupting what would have been a crucial explanation of the facility's protective barriers. "All this talk about liquid is making me thirsty." General Apo's annoyance nearly reached snapping levels. The human had been here less than a day, and already he was bored of their culture. Yet, orders were orders, and the High Command had insisted on this exchange program. They believed it would strengthen interstellar relations, though at this moment, the general was beginning to question the wisdom of that decision. "We will proceed to the cafeteria," he conceded, his voice creating defeated ripples in the air. "But remember, Cadet Maxwell, one wrong move around our weapons could have catastrophic consequences." "Awesome," Richard replied, already heading in the wrong direction. "By the way, those weapon vaults, they're temperature controlled, right? For stability purposes?" The general's only response was a long, rippling sigh as he watched the human's eyes light up with inexplicable interest in their liquid ammunition. Something about this entire situation felt off, but he couldn't quite put his manipulator on it. As they moved toward the cafeteria, Richard's questions about their weapon's fermentation process grew increasingly specific, while his attention to actual military protocols remained frustratingly non-existent. Little did General Apo know this was only the beginning of what would become the most bizarre chapter in Lumari military history, one that would force them to completely reconsider their definition of weapons. Later that evening, in the carefully climate-controlled human quarters, Richard Maxwell sat at his desk reviewing his notes. Or at least that's what the security cameras would show. His actual attention was focused on a small device that measured liquid density and chemical composition. Standard equipment for any serious brewing enthusiast. Though the Lumari had accepted his explanation of it being vital human medical equipment. "Fascinating," he muttered, studying the readings from a tiny sample he'd managed to collect when he'd accidentally brushed against one of the weapon containers. The chemical structure was remarkably similar to certain Earth spirits, though the aging process the Lumari used was unlike anything he had seen before. A soft chime indicated the hourly security sweep. Richard quickly tucked away his analysis device and pulled out the official training materials, maintaining his cover as a diligent but somewhat dim student. Through his window, he could see the Lumari guards flowing past, their bodies creating elegant patterns in the gel-filled security channels. "Just a few more tests," he whispered to himself, adding another note to his growing collection of weapon specifications that looked suspiciously like brewing notes. The margins were filled with terms like bouquet, finish, and mouthfeel, cleverly disguised as military jargon. In his private bathroom, a modified environmental control unit hummed quietly, helping maintain the lower humidity he supposedly required. What the Lumari didn't know was that he'd slightly adjusted it to create the perfect conditions for chemical experiments. The unit's soft drone masked the quiet bubbling sounds from his carefully hidden equipment. A sudden wave in the gel channels outside indicated General Apo was making his evening rounds. Richard quickly switched his screens to display the official training modules about weapon safety protocols. As the General's vibration-sensing organs swept the area, they detected nothing more than a dedicated student preparing for the next day's lessons. "Hydra Weapons Safety Protocol Review complete, sir," Richard called out with just the right mix of enthusiasm and mild incompetence when he sensed the General lingering near his door. "Looking forward to tomorrow's sessions about, proper storage temperatures and pressure conditions." The General's departing ripples carried tones of satisfaction and exasperation, exactly what Richard was aiming for. As soon as the coast was clear, he turned back to his actual work, a grin spreading across his face as he reviewed his latest analysis results. "Oh, you beautiful thing," he murmured, holding up a tiny vial of the weapon to the light. The folks back home are never going to believe this. The following morning, General Apo stood at the observation post, overlooking the massive training dome. His translucent body reflected the soft bioluminescent lighting. The facility was a display of Lumary engineering, a 200-meter diameter enclosed space crowned by a 40-meter ceiling, its environment precisely controlled to maintain 62% humidity, the minimum required for Lumary comfort while remaining within human safety parameters. Through the transparent wall, he observed the final preparations for the first joint training exercise. "All systems operational, sir," his aide reported, monitoring the array of sensing equipment. 24 vibration-sensing panels provided complete coverage of the training field, while pressure sensors embedded every 2 meters in the liquid gel floor could detect the slightest movement. Though the air analysis near the humans shows 73% higher moisture content than expected. The General's surface rippled with concern. Monitor it. Any change in atmospheric composition might harm him. Below them, the training field had been prepared according to exacting specifications. 12 interconnected shallow pools, each exactly 15 centimeters deep, created a network for Lumary mobility. A raised observation platform, coated in moisture-repelling compound, provided stable ground for their human trainee. 8 defensive positions, each equipped with modified weapon recharge stations, encircled the arena. The holographic target system was already projecting vapor-based enemies at random intervals, their ghostly forms dissolving and reforming in the humid air. "Let's see how this human will perform with our weapons," General Apo said to his aide, watching as the Lumary Elite Squad Epsilon took their positions. The top graduates moved with fluid grace, arranging themselves in the traditional fluid diamond formation. Each cadet maintained exactly 3.7 meters of spacing, optimal for weapon dispersal patterns. Richard Maxwell, by contrast, seemed to be doing his best to disrupt every carefully planned detail. Despite being assigned a modified position 4.2 meters back, a distance calculated for safe splash zone protection, he kept drifting forward. "Sir," Cadet Morp's vibrations carried clear frustration. "The human's stiff movement disrupts our tension sense coordination. He's violated position parameters by 0.3 meters 6 times in the last 44 minutes. The General's attention shifted to the equipment readouts. The P-90 hydropacks had been calibrated down to 2.7 Earth atmospheres from their standard 6.2, a safety concession that still made him uncomfortable. Real-time analysis of weapon concentration flowed across his screens, while his aide monitored the integrity of Maxwell's modified dry suit with its 5 independent seal points and pressure monitors. "Sir," the aide's surface rippled with alarm, "the human suit shows unusual residue around the mouth area. Perhaps the liquid ammunition is leaking." Before General Apo could respond, the training sequence began. With perfect coordination, the Lumary cadets executed a synchronized deployment, their weapons releasing precisely controlled streams of lethal hydro compound. "Notice the aiming skill, Cadet Maxwell," the general called out. "Yeah, but they're wasting all the—" Richard started, then caught himself. Never mind." At 09:15, sensors recorded an unauthorized sample collection attempt as Richard broke formation to investigate weapon residue, sending ripples of concern through the general's skin. By 09:30, the target elimination exercise revealed something weird. While the Lumary achieved a 99.8% success rate, the human managed only 47.2%, seemingly more interested in the weapon's loading mechanism than its targeting. "Can I get a sample from that bottle? For research?" Richard asked, making it the third time he'd requested cultural exchange samples during the exercise. A week had passed, and the general's tension grew as he reviewed the previous day's notes. The human had shown an irregular interest in the molecular structure of their most lethal weapon, yet seemed almost bored during combat effectiveness demonstrations. More concerning were the security logs from the training chamber, where 40 soldiers were arranged in orderly rows for today's training. Or rather, what should have been 40 soldiers, if the remaining ones weren't busy investigating the missing liquid ammunition. A few days ago, the count had shown 0.2 liters missing from Tank 247. The next day, another 0.3 liters vanished from Tank 249. The pattern continued, always between 0.2 and 0.3 liters per night. Yet security footage showed no unauthorized entry, and vibration sensors recorded no movement during night cycles. Perhaps our monitoring equipment is malfunctioning in the presence of a human, General Apo suggested after arranging a staff meeting, though he didn't entirely believe it himself. He'd ordered triple checking of automated detection systems and implemented new security protocols focusing on non-luminary threats, carefully avoiding any suggestion of examining the human quarters too closely. After all, this was their first diplomatic training exchange after decades of isolation. The memory vibrations of their last failed exchange with a dryland alien, which had resulted in 2 casualties, still sent ripples through Apo's body. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "the human's behavior is becoming more erratic. He arrives at morning sessions with slight stumbling, carries an unusually large water bottle labeled human electrolyte supplement, and his breath occasionally smells strange. During serious discussions, he sometimes hiccups." The general's surface rippled as he recalled Richard's latest training session. The human had volunteered yet again to help with inventory, though his count always contained small errors. His written notes focused more on taste profiles than weapon capabilities, and during combat training, he'd been overheard muttering, "Waste of a good brew." Despite concerning behaviors, maintaining this program is crucial, General Apo told his command staff. Though his internal vibrations betrayed his growing unease, the human's fascination with weapon consumption seems excessive for mere curiosity. Looking out over the training field, watching Richard take yet another unauthorized photo of the storage vault for academic purposes, the general couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something obvious, something that would soon turn their understanding of humans and their precious weapons completely upside down. Another week had passed, and General Apo's private chamber maintained a moisture-saturated environment of 88% humidity as 7 high-ranking officers arranged themselves in the traditional worry circle formation. A vibration-dampening wall surrounded them, preventing their conversation from leaking into the facility's ever-present moisture channels. "In the last 7 cycles," the general began, his surface ripples betraying deep concern, "we've lost 3.3 liters of Grade X hydro-weapon concoction." His personal aide monitored real-time weapon inventory through a neural interface, the data streaming across sensitive membrane displays. The security chief's body moved with extreme agitation. The human's quarters show trace weapon particles in the air composition analysis. A holographic display materialized in the chamber's center, showing footage of Richard inspecting vault seals. 23 separate instances cataloged and timestamped. Science Officer Mel's membrane contorted as he presented his findings. His questions about the fermentation process suggest technical knowledge beyond what we've shared, Mel reported. "These notes," the officer projected Richard's notebook contents. "He's documenting our entire process, but with terminology we don't fully understand." The general's surface tension increased. Could Earth be planning to replicate our weapons? "Sir," the security chief's ripple pattern conveyed urgent concern. "He's been on our planet for 20 cycles, enough time to learn our weaknesses." The evidence mounted as they reviewed Richard's schedule analysis. He arrived 23 minutes late to morning sessions, showed signs of fatigue during early hours, and took 47% more bathroom breaks than standard human metrics suggested normal. Night sensor data revealed minor vibrations in restricted areas, while multiple unauthorized access attempts to weapon storage databanks had been logged. Sir, a guard's vibrations carried nervous undertones. He asked about weapon vintage. General Apo absorbed the reports, his surface ripples displaying increasing concern. Implement Operation Moisture Watch immediately. The surveillance operation took shape with military speed. 12 guards positioned themselves in gel circulation vents, their bodies perfectly still as they monitored the nighttime corridors. Vibration sensors were recalibrated to detect human footsteps, while UV tracking powder, invisible to human eyes, was deployed along critical pathways. Monitor his quarters' moisture recycling unit, the general ordered. Any trace of stolen compounds must be found. 3 teams of 4 guards, each equipped with specialized human detection equipment, rotated every 2.7 hours. An emergency response team stood ready, their weapon packs charged and calibrated for non-lethal containment. Remember, the security chief rippled to his teams. He can't detect our presence through water vibrations. Use it to our advantage. Late at night, the trap was sprung. The vault illuminated only by bioluminescent security markers, humidity lowered to 48%, suspicious in itself as it matched human comfort levels. General Apo's personal monitoring station detected unauthorized vault access, while security feeds showed shadow movement near the high-grade weapon storage. Movement in Section 7X, a guard whisper rippled. The general led a silent advance through moisture channels, his team spreading in standard infiltration pattern. Vibration sensors detected a human heartbeat behind the vault door, while the security chief's urgent ripple message confirmed their worst fears. Weapon container seal broken. Moments later, the vault door opened, and they stormed inside. The scene before them defied every security protocol and natural law the Lumary understood. Richard Maxwell sat casually on a storage unit, a Grade X weapon container open beside him. He was drinking directly from the dispensing tube, the weapon level indicator showing 0.4 liters already consumed. Environmental readings scrambled to make sense of the impossible scenario. Human vital signs remained normal, with no signs of cellular dissolution, despite weapon potency sensors confirming 100% lethal concentration. Under his desk, an empty container from the previous night bore a label in human writing. Bad one. Hints of methanol. The assembled Lumary security force froze in collective disbelief as Richard raised the container in a mock toast. "Oh hey," he called out cheerfully. "You guys have got to try container 2345. It's some good stuff." General Apo's sensory organs struggled to process the scene, his surface ripples expressing what every Lumary present was thinking. Their most powerful weapon, capable of liquefying an entire squad in seconds, was being casually sipped like... The general didn't even have a comparison, but as he watched Richard make appreciative smacking sounds with his lips, he realized their understanding of both weapons and humans was about to change dramatically. For a long and awkward moment, the only sound in the vault was the soft drip of condensation from security forces' shock-stiffened bodies. General Apo's manipulators had gone completely rigid, a dangerous state for a Lumary, as he watched Richard take another casual sip from their most lethal weapon. "Code Black!" The general's voice finally burst forth, his surface erupting in emergency ripple patterns that sent waves of alarm through the facility's moisture channels. "Multiple species crisis protocol. Medical emergency in Vault 7. The security chief's surface was oscillating between combat readiness and pure confusion. "Sir, should we stop him from drinking more?" "Don't approach," General Apo ordered, his own scientific common sense finally kicking in. "The human's body must be undergoing some kind of massive chemical reaction. The cellular dissolution could become explosive at any moment." His sensory organs strained to detect any sign of the human's imminent liquefaction. Richard, meanwhile, was making appreciative smacking sounds and holding the weapon container up to the light. "You know, the clarity on this is remarkable. What kind of filtration system do you guys use?" As he spoke, the medical team burst into the vault with dissolution treatment equipment, their bodies rippling with panic. Richard continued to casually sip from the weapon container while 3 medics attempted to force him into decontamination. Impossible, the medical chief's vibration verged on going insane. His cells should be completely liquefied. The sensors must be malfunctioning, one scientist insisted, frantically scanning Richard with increasingly sensitive instruments. Perhaps the weapon has degraded. Quick, check the weapon concentration again, another shouted. It can't be full strength. Richard held up the container, swirling its contents with the expertise of a seasoned connoisseur. Want a taste? It's really smooth. You guys really aged this batch perfectly. The fermentation is excellent. The medical team's collective tension reached levels bordering insanity as their instruments confirmed the impossible. 100% weapon concentration, yet the human's vital signs remained completely normal. 3 separate confirmations only deepened their confusion. Test it again, General Apo ordered, his surface ripples betraying complete cognitive disruption. And someone stop him from drinking more. The security team's attempts to confiscate the container met with surprising resistance as Richard protectively hugged it to his chest. Hey, I wasn't finished with that one. It's the good stuff. Minutes later, in the emergency conference room, high-ranking officials arranged themselves in crisis formation, while Richard sat casually in a chair, still nursing his weapon. The room's moisture levels fluctuated wildly with the collective Lumary agitation, as sensor readings displayed on all walls continued to confirm the impossible scenario. You guys really need to learn about Earth's brewing history, Richard said, pulling out his datapad. He projected a series of images: ancient Earth vessels, medieval monasteries with brewing operations, modern distilleries. So basically, what you call weapons, we call Friday night. The Weapon Master's surface rippled with horror as he accessed ancient formula archives. Their bodies process it as entertainment? It's not just entertainment, Richard explained, warming to his subject. It's culture, religion, social bonding. Some Earth monasteries have been making this stuff for centuries. Though I've got to say, he added, examining the weapon container appreciatively, your fermentation process is unique. Something in it adds a really interesting note to the finish. General Apo's surface had gone almost completely still, a sign of profound shock. Our entire military history is your party drink? Well, technically, you've reinvented distillation at a pretty advanced level, Richard said, now in full enthusiast mode. The molecular structure is fascinating. Similar to some Earth spirits, but the way you use pressure in the aging process... He trailed off, noting the Lumary's continuing shock. Oh, come on! Didn't anyone wonder why I kept asking about fermentation and storage temperatures? The science officer's membrane moved. We thought you were gathering intelligence about our weapons. I was, Richard grinned, for the biggest distilleries back home. Do you have any idea what this stuff would be worth on Earth? Premium exotic alien spirits. The marketing practically writes itself. The weapons master moved to the nearest weapon container, his surface rippling with newfound uncertainty as he examined it. You mean humans intentionally consume substances that would dissolve our bodies? Oh man, wait till I tell you about hot sauce, Richard muttered before catching himself. But seriously, this is amazing stuff. The way you've refined the fermentation process, the perfect temperature control, the pressure aging, it's brilliant. Though I'd suggest adding some fruit juice for cocktails. Really brings out the complex notes. The guard team watched in fascinated disgust as Richard began mixing drinks from different weapon grades, explaining cocktail recipes to the horrified weapons master. See, this grade has citrus notes that would work perfectly with some fruit juice, while this one has more of a woody finish that needs a different approach. General Apo's surface contortions displayed a deeper understanding. Everything we built our military might upon is basically a really sophisticated distillery, Richard finished, though I've got to say your quality control is impressive. Most Earth distilleries would kill for this level of precision. The security chief's surface showed rapid calculations. But this means our entire defensive strategy is totally useless against humans. Yeah, Richard nodded. Contact to skin is totally harmless, and we can even drink it directly. Though, he added thoughtfully, you might want to keep that quiet. Marketing-wise, deadly alien weapon turned party drink is a pretty compelling angle. The room fell silent, except for the soft sound of Richard pouring himself another sample. The assembled Lumery officials watched as he swirled it professionally, noted the bouquet, and took an appreciative sip. "You know what the really funny part is?" he said, grinning at the still-shocked general. "All those security protocols you set up, the dehumidifiers, the special containment fields, the warning systems, completely unnecessary. Though the temperature control was crucial for proper aging, so good job there." General Appo's surface ripples conveyed defeat, acceptance, and finally, a hint of amusement. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we need to rethink our definition of weapons." "And start thinking about export licenses," Richard added cheerfully. "Trust me, this stuff is going to be huge on Earth, though we might want to work on the packaging. These military-grade containers are cool and all, but luxury spirits need a more sophisticated presentation." The general's only response was a long, rippling sigh as he watched the human who was planning to single-handedly transform their most feared weapon into a premium export product. In the background, Richard had already begun sketching bottle designs while explaining the concept of top shelf to the increasingly interested weapons master. 2 planetary cycles later, aboard the combat vessel Moisture Seeker, General Appo stood on the bridge watching tactical displays with an entirely new perspective. The 400-meter vessel's membrane walls morphed with battle readiness as they approached Haven 9, a contested world whose surface was 82% covered in water, ideal for moisture-requiring species like themselves. "Sir," the bridge officer's surface rippled with distress, "they've really taken our colony, but we are ready to strike back. Atmospheric moisture readings at 90%, perfect for surprise operations." The general's body showed no concern as he studied the tactical displays. In the loading bay below, 1,200 soldiers arranged themselves in fluid formation squares, their weapon racks extending the full length of the bay walls. But these weren't the same weapons they'd carried 2 cycles ago. "Supply status?" he asked. "Traditional hydro-weapon backpacks 2,000 units, the supply chief reported. Earth-sourced ammunition." He paused, his surface rippling with lingering disbelief. 500 units in ornate bottles. Captain Mellip, recently promoted and still showing promotion moisture patterns, approached the general's command station. He held up one of the elaborately designed glass bottles, its transparent contents catching the bioluminescent lighting. "Sir, why does this weapon come in such a beautiful container?" General Appo's body contorted with what his crew had learned to recognize as amusement. "Captain, you're holding what the humans call a party drink." They package weapons like luxury items?" The captain's surface rippled with confusion as he studied the elegant bottle. Other nearby officers gathered, their surfaces showing similar bewilderment. "The humans don't just package them this way," the general explained. "They drink them. For pleasure." "Drink," the captain exclaimed, his surface rippling with horror. The general's thoughts drifted back to that first revelation in the weapon vault. The trade agreement that followed had transformed both their military and their economy. Richard Maxwell, it turned out, had connections with several major Earth distilleries. Now, their most fearsome weapons were being exported as premium alien spirits, complete with luxury packaging and marketing that emphasized their exotic origins. The tactical officer's voice interrupted his reminiscence. "Ground forces engaging in Sector 7. On the command screens, the general watched as the battle unfolded. A soldier refilled his weapon pack with liquid from a transparent bottle labeled Premium Vintage. Another trooper deployed what the humans called golden liquid against the invading forces. The enemy, a species of colonial slime organisms, had no idea that the Lumery's dreaded weapons had become a booming export business. "Sir," the supply officer called out, his voice filled with urgency, "the humans are offering a premium vintage weapon line. They're calling it the Collector's Edition." The general's only response was a long, rippling sigh. The humans had not only transformed their most devastating weapon into a luxury commodity, but had somehow convinced half the galaxy that rarity and aging made it more valuable. The latest shipment had arrived in beautiful containers with gold-infused seals, each bottle numbered and certified. Victory indicators began flashing across the tactical displays. The enemy, expecting standard Hydra weapons, had been completely unprepared for the new versions Earth's finest distilleries had helped develop. Something about the aging process in oak barrels, Richard had explained, added what he called complexity to the weapon's effectiveness. "Report shows battle success due to unexpected weapon grade," the tactical officer announced, his surface showing pride mixed with lingering confusion. The general watched as his troops celebrated the victory, some of them raising their ornate weapon bottles in what they'd learned was called a toast, a human tradition that had somehow become standard practice among the younger officers, even though they never consumed the liquid. "Sir," the supply officer interrupted again, "Marketing Division reports the Battle Reserve line is selling at premium rates in Earth's luxury markets. They're suggesting a special edition based on today's victory." The general's body stiffened with what had become a familiar mixture of resignation and amusement. Their most closely guarded military secret had become humanity's most sought-after luxury export. Earth's finest restaurants now featured Lumary liquid on their top shelves, while their weapon production facilities had been renovated to meet what humans called artisanal crafting standards. "Do you know what the humans call this?" he asked the gathered officers, holding up one of the crystal bottles. "They call it alien moonshine. Apparently, it's considered exotic." The bridge crew's antennae lowered with collective bewilderment as they watched their troops celebrate below, raising weapon containers in the human tradition. Some had even adopted Earth customs, discussing the weapon notes and bouquet with the same seriousness of a human, just for the fun of it. Perhaps, the general mused, his body displaying the complex ripple patterns of philosophical reflection.